discuss few things about enums. Today we will discuss some more things about enums. Okay, as we discussed yesterday, enums are used for types of constants. That's the first thing. Okay, and grouping the constants together under an entity, under an encapsulated entity, is the second advantage of enums. Okay, and in enum we can write any number of enum constants. Each and every enum constant will act as a enum object, and we can write any number of attributes as well as methods, as well as constructors, as well as initialization block. Any block that is possible in a class is possible in a enum. Okay, and let me write a public constructor inside a enum. Okay, see what is telling? Modifier public not allowed here. Modifier public not allowed here. It's not possible to have a public constructor inside a enum. It's not possible to have a public constructor or even a protected constructor inside a enum. Okay, the only access level that is allowed for a enum constructor is private. The only access level that is allowed for a enum constructor is private. So why this public is restricted for enum constructor means we should restrict the object creation of enum constructor outside the specific scope. If public is allowed, then the enum objects can be created anywhere, but that's not the purpose of enum. The number of enum objects should be fixed. The number of enum objects should be fixed. So if we allow a public constructor, what happens? We can bring the enum constructor outside the package, outside the scope, and it may be possible to create objects, which should not be allowed. So as a rule, they have made the rule that enum constructor should have either private access level or default access level. Okay, enum constructor should not be public. So somebody asked yesterday, like, why can't we use enum for the purpose of the class? If we could able to do everything with a class, with a enum, like we can have attributes, methods, constructors, initialization blocks. But even though we have everything, we cannot create an object outside the scope for a enum. We cannot create customized objects for enums. Okay, only the standard existing enum objects should be used, but we cannot create customized objects for enums. The standard or the existing enum constants should be used as enum objects, but new enum objects cannot be created. And whenever the enum constant is used for the first time, at that time itself all the enum objects are created. Okay, whenever the enum constant is used for the first time, at that time itself all the enum objects are created. So if we try to compile the application and go to the classes and So whenever we access the enum for the first time, all the enum objects are being created. Now even a enum constructor can be overloaded. Enum constructors can be overloaded. Let me have attribute month ID. These are enum constants with a specific values. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the ID of the month that I am passing. Even though January is a constant, that constant will have the ID of the month, the name of the month, the display name of the month, whatever it might be, to represent the features or to represent the properties of a enum constant. To represent the properties of a enum constant, we use the attributes of the enum. We use the attributes of the enum to represent the properties of the enum constant. Let's consider like the ID of the month is a property of the constant. For January, the ID of the month is 1. So to represent the properties of the ideal way is to go for private attribute. And we have a getter. And it's not an ideal way to put setters for enum attributes. Enum attributes should not have setters. Even though setters are allowed, for enum attributes, the ideal way is, we should not put setter methods for enum attributes. Just because the enum attribute values should set through enum constants, which doesn't require any setter. So the enum attribute values should be set through enum constants only. It's not ideal to have setter methods for a enum attribute, even though it is not allowed. Even though it is allowed, setters are allowed as per the compiler and the runtime environment. But the standard way is setters should not be kept for enum attributes. Just because whatever the values that we set for enum object should be set through the enum constants only, through the enum constructors only, but not the setters. So it's not a valid thing to keep setters for enum attributes. Now, if you want to access the month ID, just what I will do is into dot get month ID. So it will give the month ID of February. What is the month ID of February? 2. And let me keep system.out.println in this constructor. Okay. Now just compile, go to the classes, execute the application. Now which one is executed? The first constructor, the augmented constructor or the augmented constructor? Which constructor is executed? The augmented constructor is executed or the augmented constructor is executed? Augmented constructor is executed just because while setting the enum values, we set using the augmented constructor. Okay, this will act as a enum object, and the values can be set like this. The constructor, the augmented constructor of the enum, the augmented constructors of the enum will be called through enum constants. Okay, so we are passing the month ID January 1, February 2, like that. Okay, and now what happens? What happens? What happens now? This will be a compile time error, just because we are passing January by passing an integer value, but here it is a string. The compatibility will verify the same like a constructor of a class. Even in case of enums, the compatibility will be verified like a class. Okay, just it will be verified. It tells that the enum objects are being created using this constructor by passing integer value, but there is no enum constructor which can take a integer value. Okay, and now if we want to compile this, definitely we should pass them as a string. Otherwise, modify this as a integer. Okay, the constructors can be overloaded in a enum. Okay, constructors can be overloaded for a enum. Now, can we have an abstract enum? Is it possible to have an abstract enum? Just think, is it possible to have an abstract enum? That's right. Enum cannot be abstract. Okay, enum cannot be abstract, just because of the reason that the enum objects are specified. Okay, the enum objects are not generated so that they cannot be created anywhere. The enum objects are fixed and they are specified, so we cannot make it as an abstract. We cannot have an abstract enum just because the enum constant will act as the enum object and that is specified. Now, can we have inheritance in enums? So let me have one second. Enum another extends with okay month. This is even this is not possible. Inheritance is not possible between enums. Between enums, inheritance is not possible. Now I have enum month and even enum another. Another is extending to month, which is not a possible case, which is an impossible case. Just because inheritance cannot be there for enums. Inheritance is not allowed for enums. Okay? So, enums will not have any inheritance. But let's have interface. Let's have an interface, and now test implements, month implements test. Now, do you think it is possible? Do you think it is possible? A enum implementing an interface? Just think little bit logically whether it is possible or not. Whether implementing a enum with the interface is a possible case or not. Yes or no? Okay.
Actually, on the here it is not possible in the design. So the implementation is just like some sort.
Okay. But the inheritance through extents and the inheritance through implements is completely different. Okay. The inheritance through extents and the inheritance through implements is different. Why inheritance between multiple enums, okay, is not possible means the enum objects are specific. Okay, the enum objects are specific. They cannot be they cannot contain, the subclass cannot contain the features of the superclass members. But the enum objects can be inherited with the interface, just because the interface doesn't offer any concreteness. Interfaces doesn't offer any concreteness. For that reason, enum can implement interface, but enum already is concrete one. But extending an enum with another enum will alter the concreteness of the if it is possible, it will alter the concreteness of the sub enum. So which is not the concept of the enum. So interfaces can be implemented in case of enum, but extents is not possible with enum. Inheritance is possible in enum with interfaces. That means with implements. By using implements, there can be inheritance in case of enum, but by using extents, inheritance in enum is not possible. Okay? Inheritance in enum is not possible with extents, but inheritance in enum is possible with implements. Understood? Now, so we can have any number of methods. Let's consider like there is a method test1. Now will it compile successful? Will it compile successful? Let's consider that nothing is there, no method is there. There is no method in the enum. Now, will it be compiled or not? There is interface test and enum month is extending to the interface. Implementing with the interface. Now, will it be compiled or not? No. What are the different ways that we can compile? Now, definitely it will not be compiled just because one abstract method is inherited to enum which was not implemented. So, if there is abstract member, definitely it will not be compiled. Now, what are the different ways of making it to compile successful? Entity? What are you listening to, man? Are you listening to the class? Yes? Just rewind the class, rewind the notes that I have told.
Implementing the method in the subclass or
Is it a class? Enum. Just see the notes that I have told just now. Just rewind the things that I have told just before 5 minutes. Enum cannot be abstract. But you are telling that make the enum as abstract. Is it a possible case? Enums cannot be abstract. So the only possibility to compile this is implementing the method from the interface. We cannot make the enums as abstract. The only possibility, if there is abstract method inherited from interface to enum, means definitely the only possibility to compile is to implement that method. For a class, there is a possibility that we can make a class as abstract, or we can implement the method and make the class as concrete. But for enum, there is no possibility to make the enum as abstract. The only possibility is to implement that method. Okay? So it was not compiled just because that method was not implemented. So if I'm implement the method correctly, okay, now this will be definitely compiled. Understood? In case of enums, okay, we cannot have abstractness for enums. There are methods inherited from interfaces to enums. They should be implemented. There is no other way. And even final is not allowed for a enum. Is final allowed for a class? Yes. But what does the final class mean? It cannot be inherited. So there is no concept of inheritance between enums. So final is also not allowed. Abstract and final are not allowed for a enum. Not inside a enum. For a enum, abstract and final are not allowed. For is different, inside is different. Okay? For a enum, abstract and final are not allowed. Let's see whether abstract is allowed inside a enum or not. Okay, now let me not go for any test. Okay? We have seen for a enum we cannot make it abstract. We cannot make a enum as abstract or final. Okay? Let's see whether we can make the members of a enum as abstract or final. Now, sorry. Private final int month ID. Okay, now will it be compiled? Will it be compiled or not? Definitely, final is allowed for the members of a enum. Final is definitely allowed for a members of a enum, not for the enum. For a enum we cannot make it final, but a member of a enum can be made final. A member of a enum can be made final. So attribute, can we have final attributes? Yes, it is possible to have final attributes. If it is possible to have final attributes, now will it compile successful? If it is possible to have final attributes, then will it compile successful? Yes or no? Final attributes will not get default values, so they should be initialized before their usage. Are we using the month ID anywhere? Are we using the month ID? Yes, we are returning the month ID. We are using that, but we are not giving any value to the final attributes. So, variable month and might not have been initialized. So, what we do is, now can we initialize a final attribute inside a constructor? Is it possible to initialize a final attribute inside a constructor? Yes or no? Definitely, it is possible to initialize a enum attribute or a final attribute inside a constructor, but only when the attribute is non-static. If the attribute is non-static, then where we can initialize the attribute means either we can initialize at the place of declaration or in a constructor or in a instance initialization block. Okay? Now in that case, will it be compiled or not? If it is possible to initialize a final attribute inside a constructor, now will it be compiled or not? That's why I used to tell, practice the things regularly. I told many times, if final attributes are supposed to be initialized in constructors, then that should be done in all the constructors. Now, are we doing it in all the constructors? Are we doing that in all the constructors? No. If final attributes are supposed to be initialized in constructors, then it should be done in all the constructors. Okay? So, we try to compile this. It's telling that it might have been initialized just because this final attribute is not initialized in this constructor. Now, will it be compiled? Will it be compiled? Yes or no? Not compile? Why do you want compile? Default constructor? Why do you not compile? Is it a rule that a class or enum should have a default constructor? Is it a rule? Is there any rule that a class or enum should have a default constructor? Until the constructor chaining is satisfied, default constructor may or may not be there. Okay? Default constructor is not mandatory for any entity. This will be perfectly compiled. Okay? Even in case of enum, until the constructor chaining and until the references are satisfied, we can omit the default constructor. It's not mandatory. Okay? So now all the enum constants are using the argumented constructor. Now if I use like this, now will it be compiled? Will it be compiled? No, just because this enum constant will make use of default constructor. But does the default constructor exist in this enum? No. So what it tells that the corresponding constructor doesn't exist. It's telling that constructor month with normals doesn't exist. Just because if you don't provide any values to the enum, it will make use of the default constructor. But the default constructor doesn't exist in that enum. Understood? So if you don't provide any values to the enum constant, then to create that enum object, internally default constructor will be used. But if you provide some values, then the corresponding augmented constructor will be used. Definitely, we can overload constructors. So, now, the ideal thing is to make the enum constructors as private.
It should be unique.
Which one? Maybe or may not be unique. Ideally it should be unique, but it may be or may not be unique.
If this may not be there, then if you are using unique, then the other
See.
is not.
There are two things basically: the common sense of the developer and the logic of the computer. If we depend 100% on the logic of the computer, what happens? The common sense of the developer will reduce anything and machine will beat the man. So, some cases, and of course in many of the cases, it should be up to the developer to use some common sense that we are not giving duplicate values to enums. Enums are used to represent constants, and if constant values are duplicated means the developer is not applying his common sense. Am I right? Machine will not do everything. The developer should apply some common sense, and we should do. Yes, January is one, and if July is also one, obviously this is a fault of the developer. Okay. Now this will be obviously compiled. Variable I might not. Sorry. Since this is a final attribute, this should be initialized in all the constructors. Now I am removing this final so that it will be compiled very successfully. So final attributes can be there for a final attributes can be there inside a enum. Now can we have abstract methods? Sorry. Can we have abstract methods for enum? Now if I print then what is the value printed? Month dot July dot month get month ID. What is the value printed? 0 or something else? Definitely 0, just because the default value for a primitive int is 0. So for July, did we assign any value? No. So the default value will be 0. Okay, and let's see whether we can have abstract methods inside a enum. Okay, let's see whether we can have abstract methods inside a enum. Now, can we have abstract method inside a enum? No. At which line it is giving an error? At which line? 10th line. That means here it is at here it is giving an error. Is it giving an error that abstract is not allowed here? Is it giving an error at 29th line that abstract is not allowed here? It's not giving like that, right? It's telling that month is not abstract and does not override abstract method test1. Is it telling that for test1 abstract is not allowed, or for this method abstract is not allowed? No, it's not telling like that. That means abstract keyword will be allowed for a method inside a enum, but where the method will be overridden. If abstract keyword is allowed for a method inside an enum, where the method is overridden or where the method is implemented. Definitely abstract keyword will be allowed for methods of a enum, but where, how we can implement or we can override or we can implement the methods of a enum means definitely at the enum constants. The enum constants can have corresponding blocks. So this is a block of the enum constant. So in this block we can override. So let me consider that. Now let me consider that get month ID is abstract. Now if you want to override this, just I can override simply. Just I am giving an example, but it's not the exact case, but just I am giving an example. Now this is how I can write blocks for a enum constant. Each and every enum constant can have its own block. In that block we can write some code which is specific to the enum constant or specific to the enum object. In that block we can write in the block of the enum constant or in the block of the enum object, we can write code specific to the enum object. Now, will it be compiled? Will it be compiled now? We have overridden get month ID. Now, will it be compiled or not? Will it be compiled? Definitely no. It will not be compiled. Just because are we doing for all the enum objects? No. Just because this abstract method will be there for all the enum objects. For January, February, March, April, May, June, July. For all the enum objects, this abstract method will be there. So now the error is giving at the 15th line. Let us see. What's telling? So this block will act as some anonymous block. So this cannot be done. Just let me revert the previous things. Just this is giving error just because I forgot this thing. This block acts as a anonymous block. Anonymous enum. Like an anonymous inner class, this will act as a anonymous enum. So this by using this anonymous enum, the enum object will be created. So we should not use these members here. So what we do is, let me go for a test method which is concrete. Now let me go for a method test which is abstract. Let me not touch the existing one. Now okay, inside test method. Now let me try to compile the application. So now is it giving an error for January? Is it giving an error for January? No, but it is giving an error for Feb. Just because Feb doesn't implement the abstract method. Okay, so if it is supposed to be implemented, if there is a abstract method in a enum, there is an abstract method in the enum, then the abstract method inside the enum should be implemented by all the enum constants. If there is an abstract method in the enum, then the abstract method in the enum should be implemented by all the enum constants. Thirdly, the application will compile. If there is an abstract method inside the enum, then that abstract method should be implemented by all the enum constants. How we can implement a method for a enum constant means writing a block for that enum constant. Okay, like this, writing a block for the enum constant. Just soon after the enum constant, just write a block. This will be an anonymous block. And in that block, just override the enum, override the abstract method. Understood? So if there is any abstract method inside the enum, that abstract method should be implemented by all the enum constants in the corresponding enum constant blocks. Let's consider that this test method is not abstract. Okay? Test method is not abstract. Now test method is not abstract. Now let's consider like I'm executing now what is the output? Just note it down. Just note it down and just I'll scroll down and tell the output. Just note down this. Okay? Or otherwise very simply, just please hold for a second. Just simply this is my, just note down this. I'll scroll down and you should tell the answer. Okay? Shall I scroll down? Now, what is the answer? What is the output? Just see your notes, what I have asked, and just tell the output by seeing this enum. Okay, just this is what I have asked, and this is the enum. What is the output then? Test enum. I'm asking the output. Just you have written something on your notes. If I execute that, what is the output? Inside test enum. What's the first system that the println will print? Inside? Will it come to the test method inside the January, or will it come to the test method inside this enum? January. Now for this, it will come to the test method inside the enum. Just because this is a method inside the enum and this is a block which is specific to the enum constant. Preferably, the method which is specific to the enum constant will be executed. Okay? Preferably, the method which is specific to the enum constant will be executed. So, if we try to execute the application, now first it is going for Jan and then it is going for enum. Now, if I ask the question that is object-oriented programming possible in case of enums? Is object-oriented programming possible in case of enum constants? No? Is inheritance impossible in case of enums? Inheritance is possible with. Now, is object-oriented programming concept? Is abstraction possible with enums? Is method overriding possible with enums? What we are doing here? What you are listening? What I am asking? What I have asked? Is method overriding possible in case of enums? Are we doing the same? Here there is a method already with test. We are overriding the method specific to the enum constant, so that at the runtime what is executed? The method specific to the enum constant is executed. So, method overriding is possible in case of enum constant. All the object-oriented principles can be implemented with enums. Whether it is abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism, everything. All the object-oriented principles can be implemented with enums. Whether it is abstraction or polymorphism or inheritance or even encapsulation. But that is not possible without enum constant. Abstraction or overriding or anything will be possible only inside a enum, not for the enum entity. Abstraction is not possible for enum as an entity. For enum, we cannot keep as abstract. But inside the enum, for the members of the enum, we can implement object-oriented principles. For the members of the enum, we can implement object-oriented principles, abstraction as well as polymorphism as well as encapsulation, everything. These things are possible for the members of the enum, not for the enum. For the members of the enum. That means for enum constants and methods of enum. And even enum constant is also a member of enum. So, now can we call this statement as a polymorphic statement? Can we call this statement as a polymorphic statement? Yes, just because at the time of compilation it will be bound to this method, this test method. But at runtime this will be bound to the test method specific to January. So this is a polymorphic statement. This statement is a polymorphic statement. But can we consider this as a polymorphic statement? No, just because at the time of compilation as well as execution, February will be pointing to the same method. February doesn't have the method of overriding. Okay? So this is how we can apply or we can go with the object-oriented concepts for a members of the enum, not for the enum, for the members of the enum, for the enum constant especially. Understood? Now, can we have final methods inside the enum? Is it possible to have final methods for a enum? Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
No. Why?
Because if we are over writing the object, if we are applying final, then we cannot also write the object.
That doesn't mean that final is not allowed. Does that mean that final is not allowed? This will not be an error just because we are putting final for a method of enum. Final for a method of enum is valid, but definitely this is a compile time error. Just because here are we trying to override the test method? Yes or no? Here definitely we are trying to override the test method that is present in the enum. But overriding a final method is a compile time error. Here it's not a compile time error. Let me cut this. No, that method is not overridden. Now in this case, enum can have a final method which will be compiled and even executed successful. But we try to override a enum final method, or if we try to override a final enum method or a final method of the enum inside the enum constant block, then if we try to write a method, then definitely it will follow all the overriding rules. Then this is a final method inside the enum, then we are trying to override this method inside the block of the enum constant. So it will verify all the rules. Final method should not be overridden. So now if we try to go there, compile this, just because it is a compile time error. This is a compile time error just because the overridden method is final. Understood? This enum block, okay, this enum block, okay, will inherit all the members of the enum. Will get all the members of the enum, attributes, methods, everything, okay, except private members. This enum block will get all the members of the enum except private members, okay, which is similar to kind of inheritance. But inheritance from one enum to another enum is not possible. Okay, inheritance from one enum to another enum is not possible. And all non-private members will be inherited from the enum to the block of the enum constant. All the non-private members will be inherited from the enum to the block of the enum constant. See, January enum constant has a block. To that block, all the enum members will be inherited. That means attributes, methods will be inherited, except those that are having private access level. If the private access level is there, then it cannot be inherited. But all non-private attributes and non-private methods will be inherited to the block of the enum constant from the enum. From the enum, they will be inherited to the block of the enum constant. This is the block of the enum constant, and to this block, all the attributes and all the methods that are non-private will be inherited from the enum. Understood? So, even abstract methods also will be inherited. In abstraction rules, overriding rules, let's consider that this is not private. Will it compile successful? Now this method is not final and this is having a default access level. Now will it compile successful? Will it compile successful? No. Why it will not compile successful? Why it will not compile successful? Because the access level is public in the enum. but here we are trying to override in the enum block, but the access level is decreased. So we try to compile this application. Just that it cannot override just because we are trying to assign a weaker access privilege. It was public, but you are trying to assign package. Understood? All the members from the enum will be inherited to the enum constant block or the block of the enum constant. Understood? And we have discussed attributes, methods, constructors, even initialization blocks also. We can have even initialization blocks in the enum. We can have even initialization block in the enum. This will be compiled as well as executed successful. Test is not overridden. So let me override the test method correctly. Press compile. Those are the classes. Execute application. So first IIB constructor, IIB constructor, IIB constructor. This is the same like a class. And even static initialization block. Whenever we use the enum for the first time, then the static initialization block will be executed. What? Sorry? This is static. So, we try to execute application. So, whenever we use this enum for the first time, at that time itself, and just I have mentioned it as IIB, let me make it SIB. So, whenever we use the enum for the first time, okay, then itself the static initialization block will be executed. Okay, but in case of enums, first the enum constants will be loaded, then after static initialization block will be executed. But in case of class, first the static initialization block is executed, then the object will be loaded. But in case of enums, it is reverse. First the enum all constants will be loaded, only then after the static initialization block will be executed. That's the difference. First all the enum objects are loaded, only then the remaining things will happen. Understood? And this will complete the enums. Okay? So, right now let's wind up for the day. Tomorrow, 6:30. Okay, I have some work. Okay? So, tomorrow morning, 6:30. So, I'm leaving it early. Can you come at 6:30 in the morning? It's very early, right? Just 9:40. So we can assemble, and we will assemble 6:30 in the morning, and 6:30 to the same time 8:30. Okay. Most probably tomorrow morning we will complete annotations. Okay. After annotations, and even we have class in the evening also tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow we'll have a class even in the evening also. Then we'll start with the Java doc and the jar files, class path and the related stuff. Okay. Tomorrow morning 6:30 we'll start with annotations.